Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Okay, I wanted to start off the presentation with the type of images that you find here at the Metropolitan Museum, where I am shooting this live video. It's very interesting because this is an Islamic exhibit, and if you go throughout this exhibit, I would say 90% of the images in this exhibit are white skin. Even the Asians are white skin. The Arabs are white skin. We're going to take a walk over here to the Maghrib Ii Exhibit, which is the North African exhibit. And it's a similar thing. It seems that all the images that are here just seems to be white. As if no black people contributed anything to this vast world of Islam. Now, Islam is very important to Western civilization because Western education, Western sciences come out of the Islamic world. And a lot of the architecture and many other things, they all come out of the Islamic world. But let me just give you a look at the people doing the work here. And these are Moroccans, okay? So all lighter-skinned peoples. Now, this is a magnificent exhibit. I love this exhibit. I take my students here all the time. This architecture here, you take a look at it, and if I was able to zoom in close enough, the beauty of Islamic art is that there's science to it. There's great meaning to it. Like inside this beautiful piece of work here, the name Allah is written all over it in Arabic, but they made it so stylish, it just looks like a work of art. So you have the fountains. You know, in Morocco, they have beautiful fountains like this where they make wudu, where you wash up for prayer. And beautiful fountains just like this. Everything that is done is done with beauty, because one of the attributes of Allah is al-jamil, which is the beautiful. The Quran also talks about those who are hasana in deeds, the best in deeds. So with that being said, you may ask the question, why is it important that as a Muslim that you stress the work of your people? Why not just say the Muslim people? Well, ask the people who put on this exhibit, why is it not important to include the African contribution to the world of Islam? I mean, not one mention of Timbuktu in this whole exhibit, even though Timbuktu was one of the most literary societies, more literary than Europe. It boasts of 1 million books, but not one book from Timbuktu inside this whole exhibit. But you see here the Maghribi script, which comes out of North Africa in the exhibit. But yet, not one mention of Timbuktu in this whole exhibit. So in the world of white supremacy, which has pervaded into the world of Islam, the suppression of the contribution of the black man is very present. Even when I studied the Arabic language, and I continue to study, I'm on my 5th book of Arabic course book, and it's interesting when they give me things to translate. The last sentence I read for me to translate was that somebody met a black girl and told her to come to his house to be a servant, but she abandoned him. So even in studying Arabic language, in the literature, they portray black people, black women as servants. Another book I read, they wanted me to translate how black women have big eyes. Did you see? So this type of disrespect for our people and this white supremacist concept has pervaded even into the Islamic culture, where they suppress the contributions of black people to Islamic culture. This is very critical for you as a black Muslim, because a lot of people like to use this term disbeliever or kafir to say that if somebody doesn't follow a particular school of thought, a particular way of thinking in Islam, then that makes them a kafir. Kafir literally means ungrateful. If a person is ungrateful, that's what kafir means. If we're ungrateful to our Lord, we're ungrateful to our Creator made us black. So if you don't like that you're black and you want to be dressed up as a 14th century desert Arab in the 21st century, as if that's going to make you more righteous and get more blessings, then you are kafir. You are ungrateful to who and what the Creator made you to be. So, and if you look in the Quran, look at the story of Iblis. Iblis had a problem bowing down, not just to man, the man that Allah created in Adam, a man made from black mud fashioned into shape. He said, I can't bow down to this man that you made out of black mud fashioned into shape. I'm not bowing down to him. So, of course, they're going to have a problem. And what Iblis promised, he said, I'm coming in that straight path. I'm coming in that Siratul Mustaqim, which is the deen. And I'm coming before them, from behind them, and from their right and from their left. And you will not find most of them grateful. And here we are, ungrateful. We are ungrateful to who Allah created us to be, made us to be, the sons of Adam, that he made Khalifa on the earth. And we're trying to imitate everybody else but ourselves. We're either putting blue contacts in our eyes to be European looking, or we're trying to be an Arab if we become Muslim, or we're just trying to be everybody but ourselves. So this is why it's important to know our history, and this is why the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, a lot of you attribute this remark to Malcolm X, and this is no disrespect to Malcolm, but history is best qualified to reward all research. He learned that from his teacher, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. That statement comes from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And so today we're going to get into the history, particularly of these African kingdoms and Fulani kingdoms. And another thing, you see all these treasures that come out of the Islamic world. Why no mention of Mansa Musa, ancient Mali, which were one of the richest kingdoms in the Islamic world, produced the richest man that ever lived, but yet in this Islamic exhibit, not one mention of ancient Mali, Timbuktu. So we can't leave it to them to tell our story, to tell our history. We have to tell it for ourselves. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give a brief overview from the perspective of the Fulani, because I'm doing research on the Fulani. Let me just show you some of these treasures real quick. And, I want to thank Brother Morroco Rashidi, because, he said something when he came to Mosque number 7 the other day that, to be a general scholar of all African history is great, but he said what we need are specialists, people to specialize on certain subjects. And when he said that, that made me feel very good, because I specialize in Fulani history. That's one of my main focal points since I found my roots in Fulani people. So I'm grateful that he mentioned that, because it encourages me to do what I'm doing today, which is to specialize in a certain history. So I hope you can still hear me. I want to get over to this map here. The first kingdom I want to deal with is the kingdom that we just left, which is the kingdom of Morocco. And right now, you look at the Moroccan people today, a lot of them are very, very light-skinned, and that came from from several factors. The first factor is when the Moors and the dark Arabs went up into Spain, and they, of course, married the women there, and you're going to produce lighter skin from that. There was a second thing that happened, which was, of course, the Spanish Inquisition. And there were a lot of Spaniards who converted to Islam. And when the Christians pushed the Muslims out of Spain, a lot of the Spanish converts came down into Morocco. So that also produced a different complexion in the Maghrib, as it's called today. But then there's also the Barbary slave trade that took place. They did the DNA on a lot of the white Moroccans, and they're Swedish, they're French, they're Spanish, they're Italian, of these different people. That happened during the Barbary slave trade, where the Moors actually went into Europe and captured European slaves and brought them into Morocco. But today, the myth is in Morocco that all blacks came to Morocco as slaves. And you have these people called the Nawa people, the Nawa musicians, and their origin is West Africa. And they sing these songs about their ancestors coming to Morocco as slaves, as if all blacks that are in Morocco today are slaves. And this is the furthest thing from the truth. Not only is it so far from the truth, it is the total opposite of the truth. Because without the Fulani, and they sing about the Fulani in their songs in particular, but without the Fulani, there is no Morocco. The original name for Morocco is Marrakesh, and the people today still call it by its original name, Marrakesh. That's the original name for Morocco, not Maghrib, not Morocco, but Marrakesh. So we're going to take a look at this map here. In this area here, this is Senegal, right here. And I love this map because it has no name of the countries. And this area here is called Southern Mauritania. As you can see there, that's Timbuktu. But this is Southern Mauritania. Now, Yusuf ibn Tashfin was preceded by his founder, his father, who was a preacher of Islam, and he was a Berber. And his people would not take to his preaching. The Lamtuna, the Gadala, they weren't trying to hear what he had to say. So what he did, he went to the ancient kingdom of Takror. Now Takror is the name for Fulani. It's the ancient name for Fulani. And the Takror kingdom, which was here in southern Morocco, no, not southern Morocco, but Mauritania, which was once a part of Morocco, Mauritania. And this area right here, this is Mali, this is Senegal, this is Mauritania, and in this area over here is where he went and he found the Takror people. Now the Takror people welcomed his message, and the Takror people actually helped him to build an army because he wanted to take over the rest of what is now known as Morocco. And there was his own tribe, again, in the Jadala, which are known as Tuareg today. They had not converted to Islam yet. So this is a very interesting point in history because many people say the Berbers converted the Fulani to Islam. No, the Fulani already had a kingdom in the 10th century, and it was there before that. And the Fulani actually helped to convert the Berbers to Islam, particularly the Jadala clan or the Gadala clan, who had not converted yet. So it started here, and from here it went up, the armies went up, and they conquered, and they established their kingdom in Marrakesh. They are called the Murabitun, and in history, they're called the Almoravids. The Almoravids. So when you read about in history books, it's spelled Almoravids, the Almoravids. So these are the ones, the Takrur and the Berbers were the ones who established Marrakesh. So there is no way you could think that the founders, the very founders of the country, were slaves. No, they were not slaves. They were the founders. It's these people who are there today who are descendants of the Barbary slave trade, and who were slaves that are now pretending like they're the original rulers of Morocco and Marrakesh. So that's one kingdom. And let me just say something a little bit more about that. That connection between the Takrur and the Berbers went all the way up into the time of Mansa Musa, where they would get their Arabian horses in Morocco from the Takrur people, because the Takrur are cattle breeders. They breed cows, they breed sheep, they breed all type of cattle. So the very, very expensive Arabian horses were bred by Takrur people and sold to the kingdom of Marrakesh. The textiles, as I said before in my earlier presentations, textiles, for clothing, for carpet, for all type of cloth. The first kingdom to produce textiles in West Africa was the Takrur kingdom. And the Takrur people introduced textiles, cotton weaving to West Africa. And these were prized items, not just in Morocco, but all the way to Egypt. They would get their textiles from the Takrur people in southern Mauritania. So this is the wealth that was coming out of West Africa, and in all of this Islamic exhibit, not one mention of the West African contribution. But going back to the original subject, that kingdom still exists today. The kingdom of Marrakesh, the kingdom of Morocco, it still exists up until this very day. So there are several other kingdoms that were co-founded by the Fulani people that still exist. The other one is the Sudan, which is all the way on the east coast of Africa. You have the kingdom called the Sudan, which means the blacks, basically. And Uthman bin Fodio had a vision that the Mahdi will come up out of the Sudan. When the man who called himself the Mahdi stood up and said that he would, that he was the Mahdi, his followers, the followers of Uthman bin Fodio, which were, of course, Fulani and Hausa and the West Africans, they migrated over to the Sudan and they fought the British. And they were successful. And so if it were not for the followers of Uthman bin Fodio, there would be no Sudan. So that kingdom still exists up until this very day. Not only did the Fulani play a role in the fighting that started the kingdom, the scholars who established the government, who laid the groundwork for the government of the Sudan, they called for scholars from Futa Jalans, Futa Toro, to come all the way to East Africa to help formulate the government in the Sudan. So on every level, not just you have the cattle Fulani. They say in the Sudan you have three types of Fulani. One is the book Fulani, who are the scholars. And those are the ones who helped shape the government. And a lot of them have become Arabicized and took on Arabic names. And they, so that they wouldn't be alienated as foreigners, they have created Arab clans that practice Fulani tradition, but they have Arabic names to them. But they are Fulani. And their DNA proves this. And then you have the cattle Fulani, the red Fulani who go back and forth with the cattle. And then you have the book and the cow Fulani, where you have a scholar, but he has to have his cows with them. So you have those three types of Fulani, and these are the ones that help establish the government of the Sudan, which is still in existence to this very day. This is very important because we think that, Europeans came and just conquered all of Africa and it was all subjected and colonized, and that Ethiopia is the only African kingdom that was never colonized. There are many, many African kingdoms, even within the borders. For instance, you have the Socorro Caliphate, which still, up until this day, was never interrupted. The lineage of the Socorro Caliphate still ruling from generation to generation to generation, uninterrupted, and it still exists to this day. Adamawa, still a kingdom. The people of Adamawa, there's a border. One side is on Cameroon, one side is on Nigeria, and they go back and forth. Like those lines and those borders do not exist. They just go back and forth. If one of their relatives die in Cameroon, they just walk across, the border. They don't recognize the borders. The borders are only on the map, but the borders do not exist in real life. The borders do not exist. So, as I was doing this presentation, one of the security said, "You can't do that." And it happened to be a black security guard. I mean, why? Protecting the master's house. Like, it's illegal for me to talk in my phone inside of a museum. So this is our people's mentality. May Allah help us. And that border means absolutely nothing to Fulani people. Adamawa still operates. They still have a Lamido, which is a ruling class, a ruling system that is still there. Then you have, again, as I said, Socorro. Recently, a woman from here, Brooklyn, Anna Bobkin, she did a book called Walking with Abel, and she stayed with a Fulani family in Mali. And she was talking about Sekou Amadou and the system he set up in Mali 200 years ago. She said that system still exists to this day. So even though you don't see these kingdoms on the map, the systems are still there. The kingdoms are still there. They're still operating. They were never conquered. You cannot conquer a nomad. You cannot colonize a nomad. A nomad is too much on the move. These nomads, some of them don't even know what country they're born in. They're just born in Africa. So, so this is what I wanted to share with you, that yes, we still have, no matter, regardless of what the map says, the political map says, we still have kingdoms that we founded and that are still in existence today, uninterrupted. And even if it was interrupted, and for instance, the Socorro Caliphate, they had to pay a tax to the British. But still, their lineage, their rulership, their scholarship, their history, their language is still there. That was not interrupted. So you may have invaders, that might come in and, be strong enough to get a tax from you. But that's not going to stop your culture, your language, and the lineage still being passed down from generation to generation uninterrupted. And I'm sure these are not the only African kingdoms that went on uninterrupted. So thank you for tuning in. I hope that you learned something, and I hope this talk was beneficial to you. And may Allah continue to bless us as a people to grow and come back into the knowledge of ourselves and take our proper place. Peace. Assalamu alaikum.